Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to AVX Live. I'm Joe Gilderson, President of Corporate Audiovisual Services. And we're right in the heart of the busy season. So we're having lots of fun. And so today's going to be a shorter discussion. No guest. We're just going to get right into talking about some event budgeting. And where does AV and lighting fit into that? Good question. Before we get started, though, let me just remind everybody, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. While you're on any of those channels, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And, of course, drop us a comment. Be a part of the show. Come talk to me. I mean, you don't want to hear me all day, do you? No. If you miss anything, go back. You can take a look at our YouTube channel, and the other 117 episodes are going to be listed there. And then afterwards, I'm sure that my friend Alexis is going to be posting on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Some shorter shark bites, as Andrew might say. But look, let's see if we can get right into this thing. Today's discussion is on event budgeting and how AV and lighting fit into your event budget. You know, production in general is one of the top 3 expenses for all events. You're going to have catering. You're going to have AV. Let's group lighting in with AV. And you're going to have the venue expenses. Those are usually the top 3. Now, if there's a special entertainment or there's something unusual or promotion is a big part of the event, those are separate. But most events, catering, AV, and the venue are really your top 3 expenses. So today I have some visuals. Normally I don't have slides, but today we're going to have some slides. So look at this. This is like magic, the way this happens. It's incredible. So I'm going to tell you what I think one of our most common issues is that we hear all the time. And of course, nobody describes it like this, but everybody will know the saying, and that is champagne tastes and beer budgets. Now, what does that mean? I mean, look, I like champagne. I like beer, but I like champagne more. But people like, they want the best, right? Who doesn't want the best? But they may not actually have the money for the best. When you watch the Grammys and you see some of the, the Super Bowl halftime show, those are the best. That's the highest level, right? So we have to kind of look at how that works with other events. But let's start with some visuals. So we have this kind of thing happen all the time where people say, hey, we want, the Tony Robbins event. We want something like that. That's what I want it to look like. It's pretty hard to, for most of our clients to reproduce a Tony Robbins level production, right? Each person pays $10,000 to be there. There's 2,000 people. He is at the cutting edge of technology. He has 10 tractor trailers full of equipment. There's, hundreds of people working that day. Most events are not to that scale. Now, the good news is you probably don't need that scale, especially if you have, a business town hall meeting, you have a corporate conference, you have a 150-person executive crew. You probably don't need that level and that scale. But you might be able to take some of the things that they're doing and apply it in a different scale. So that's something to consider. I have another image. This will be more for our fundraising folks. The Tony Robbins equivalent is really the Robin Hood Foundation and the nonprofit and the fundraising side. You're probably not going to be able to reproduce that event like that. They raised $68 million that night. They have 4,000 people. The scale is just different. They have weeks to build that setup and that event. You probably have hours. So it's a different thought process. But again, the good news is you might be able to take certain elements or parts or things that, conceptually that are being produced in that scale of event and apply it to your event. So maybe your 250 people and your regional charity can have something that reflects that. But there's ways to do that. And I think that's really what we're going to try to do. So let's go to, where do we start? Because I think that's where most people get caught up is where do we start? The There's a few different decisions you can make in the very beginning. And if you have a production partner, they can really help you go in the right direction. Let's start with the basics. Supply and demand. A lot of our event people, whether it's planners, it's venues, it's catering, and of course, production, they'll use the term availability, which is really supply and demand. Okay. If you choose a Thursday in October in the Northeast, it's probably going to be very busy. And all of those people are going to be very busy. If you choose a Tuesday in March, it probably won't be as busy, right? And so all of your pricing kind of goes with that. And so those dates and those times, those are very important. And, you're seeing it all across the wedding community, which we don't really do much work with. But did anyone ever hear of a Thursday night wedding before COVID? It's pretty common now, right? There's price advantages, there's availability issues, there's supply and demand. And so that's a really important thing, supply and demand. Let's look at another area. Starting with the most important things first, right? We just said that the venue, audio, visual, and lighting, and catering were the three biggest budget items. So you should really start with those things first. That's going to determine a lot and let you know what you have to spend on other areas. And sometimes it's funny because sometimes I see people start with other things that are far less important first. They might start with the theme, and they might start with the cocktail hour. I don't know. They start with entertainment a lot, and they're going to build the event around these other things that are not usually as important. And they're probably going to take away budget from a key item because you're coming at it from the wrong direction. So my advice is start with the most important things first. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. There is another really important factor, the message, right? What's the purpose of why you're hosting the event? Sometimes that gets lost. It gets lost in all the other stuff going on. You have to make that the most important thing. So keep right with those things. I think you'll have a good start. And then are you working with vendors or are you working with partners? What does that mean? Well, a vendor is like somebody you just hired for the day. A partner is someone that you have a relationship with and that has your best interests at heart. Now, most of the time, you can get a pretty accurate budget range from people that are partners, right? They understand you. They understand your organization. They have a good sense of probably what you could spend on something. They can say, hey, look, for X, you can do this, this, and this. That's a partner. Most of the time, you're not usually getting that from someone you would call a vendor. However, you can. There is definitely that opportunity. I think you just have to have a really good introductory conversation and discovery process, and that's from both the client side and the supplier side. I think if people really get to understand what the goal is and what's trying to be done, then you actually do have the groundwork for a really positive vendor relationship. But all these things play into how you're going to develop your budget. Now, when we're talking about AV and lighting specifically, let's look at these key things. Okay, because number one is the space. The space that you choose, the venue that you choose, is really going to dictate a lot. A lot of the decisions that we're going to make in the production side are going to be based on the space. If you go into the woods, you cannot assume that there's going to be good internet. We have some events that take place really in some areas that are somewhat remote, but they still want to do all those things that they would expect in a high-tech environment. You're probably not going to be able to do that. So if that's your goal, should you choose that venue? I think that's a question you got to ask yourself in the very beginning. The space is also going to be able to determine what we're physically going to do. Is there enough electricity to put the giant video wall? Is it physically big enough? You ask for a giant screen for a movie premiere. but the ceiling is 9 feet tall. So we're not going to be able to do that because the space is dictating what we can do. And so the options will change. But the physical size, what, are we in, a huge park and we're trying to cover this vast space? Like all of those are major factors and they change how the budgets are going to work. And then, of course, the seating and how it's going to work, the movement of the audience. They're going to go from this room to that room to this room to that room. When we talk about our corporate conferences or our association conferences, if they have 10 breakout rooms and maybe there's 2 panels, we want to encourage them to put those panels in the same room and just change the schedule around. Okay, why don't you do one in the morning, one in the afternoon? But do it in that one room instead of having 2 of those setups, which costs more money, especially across a multi-day event, right? Because it's really each day. So that's one of those ways that if you're talking to a partner, they can advise you. And I think that's what you're looking for, is you're just trying to get good information. One of the other things that comes up, many of my technology folks are going to be very upset with this part, but the newest technology may or may not be what you need. Look, there's many events where new technology is critical, right? Especially if it's some sort of upfront or it is a tech event. So you have to be able to showcase new technology. If it's an AI event, we should probably be showing something that utilizes AI, and that's going to then affect how the budgets work. But there's a lot of events that do not require the newest technology. Now, when you're talking about technology, it's like, okay, well, is it going to help me achieve the goal? Right? That goes back to the purpose. How's it going to affect the audience and the guests? Certain events, they're not going to care. Other events, it's critical, but you have to know your audience. What about the price tag, right? New tech usually means bigger price tag. Just keep it in mind. It may be important, but it may not. So I think that's a discussion you have to have. And then, what are the options to achieve your goal? Can I still achieve the goal if I'm using this, or using that? And what's the range? Because they're going to have different impact, of course, in a room and in a space. Let's think about function first. What does that mean? Everything really has to work. Let's start there. And that's another thing. New tech sometimes still has a few bugs. There's a few things that got to get worked out. But if it's important to be the first one to have that, then the risk reward balances out. But I like to encourage our clients to think about the functionality first. Let's use reliable equipment. Let's have a complete understanding of what we're trying to do that day. And that's all part of the planning process. The challenge comes when we're not aware of all the things that a client is trying to do. And then we may or may not have the right equipment in the room, right? Because functionality and reliability counts a lot more than how bright something is or its contrast or the patterns it can make or, is it pretty? So we want to go at functionality first. And also a factor to keep in mind is that complexity and design, that costs more. It costs more because it takes more time. It may not be more equipment, but there's different equipment that has to have a bigger capacity. And usually that equipment requires a more skilled person because they're specialties at that point. It's like when you're doing a hybrid event, you're streaming to one side and you have a live audience in the room. They're kind of 2 different jobs going on at the same time. And I know that can get lost. But if you're working with someone who can explain it to you, I think that's a good thing. That's a person who's trying to help you. And the last piece is just to keep your attendees in mind, right? What's their experience going to be? Because ultimately, that's going to be a very important part of it. Can they see? Can they hear? Do we have remote people? Is accessibility an issue? Each event is different, but a lot of times the same questions are going to apply. And this becomes kind of a routine. So we have like a routine that we go through. And as we're asking people, we're trying to really learn, what our role is for the event, how we can help people, and then we can determine options. And I think all of that plays into the budgeting. I have one last point, and it's this phrase, it's just. What does that mean? It's just audio. Like it's just a microphone. I mean, it's just a screen. It's just this. It's just that. It's never just anything. And I think that's important because everybody says, oh, it's just this. Well, is it just an entree? Is it just an appetizer? I don't know. But usually there's more to it than it's just. And I think that's important because you need a fully functional system, right? And if you're planning ahead and you're making good decisions at the beginning, usually you're going to have a great experience. Your guests are going to have a great experience, and it's going to be a successful event. And that is what we're here to do. So hopefully this is helpful. We didn't go too deep today. If you think that you want to get more into some of this information, like real details of what could I use to do this, what could I use to do that, look, you can certainly reach out. You can make a comment anywhere here, on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. You know what? I have a comment right here while we're talking about comments. Mr. Mike D says, how critical is your event planner partner to this process? I think they're very important. And for a lot of reasons. And I think, because that's one of your partners as opposed to a vendor. And they can usually help guide through. Usually, your event planning partner, they know more spaces and venues than you're probably aware of. They know some of the ins and outs. They usually know where the service is applicable to your type of an event. They know different partners for different, productions even. Like we certainly don't do all of our events for all of our clients, right? They may have someone that they use for one thing, and then maybe they use us for another type of thing, and vice versa. And that comes up. Maybe they, if it's a wedding, we don't really do many weddings. Like they're going to know that that's really not our forte. Now, the good news is we'll be able to refer them to somebody else who might be an expert in that. So I think that's a great question, Mike. The event planner is really important in the process. But anybody have any other questions? You want to learn more? If you think we should dig more into this topic, happy to do that, and ready to jump in on that whenever we can. But right now, it's time to wrap this thing up. So don't forget, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Wednesdays at 1:00. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, and go check out our YouTube channel, and you can see all sorts of fun information afterwards. Look out on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Listen, everybody, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure because this is just fun. And apparently now I got to go back and do some other work. But look, everybody have a good week. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.